Welcome to Bonn Park. I'm Sarah Geidlinger.
And I'm Marshall Ward.
And today we have Amit Mehta,
a brilliant creative mind in our community.
He is the founder and operations leader of Good Company Productions.
We have so much fun talking about music and live performances.
And also their pivot to streaming and how that's gone for them. Amit is passionate about our community, and that really shines through in this chat that we have.
Yeah, let's kick it off with some music.
Welcome to Bonn Park.
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 Do you enjoy Bonn Park Podcast?
If so, we would really appreciate it if you
leave a review,
like, rate, subscribe, but most importantly,
share directly from the platforms
with your family and friends. That's the best way to get the word out to everybody, and more people will get to see our show that way. So click those like buttons and share our show. Thank you.
Thanks.
On with the show. This is it. Bonn Park is supported by the St. Jacobs Farmers Market. The market is a community landmark of more than a half century and is the largest year-round farmers market in Canada. Whatever you crave, you'll find it there. There's country classics like fresh apple fritters, cinnamon rolls, and Oktoberfest sausage on a bun, and new favorites like corn-wrapped vegan tamales, Greek gyros, and blooming onions. With almost 300 food and artisan vendors on site, there's something for everyone, and it makes for a great day trip with family or friends. The St. Jacobs Market is open Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays during the summer. Stay up to date on hours and events by following the St. Jacobs Farmers Market on Facebook, Instagram, or at stjacobsmarket.com. And here's a word from Summer.
I love going to the market with my family. There's so much to see and do. I love trying all the different foods, and it's a great tradition for our family.
Hey everyone, this is Amit from Good Company Productions. Thank you for tuning in. You are about to listen to a little snippet of a performance by a band called The Free Label. And this was taken from our last concert in a box of 2020, actually. And this is all live, so please enjoy. They're a great band from Toronto. Check them out.
Come here, baby. Take this crazy thing. He ain't too hip now about that new breed thing. Well, come here, baby. Well, Papa's got a brand new bag. Come here, mama. It's crazy thing. He ain't too fancy, baby, but his line is pretty clean. Well, come here, baby. Papa's got a brand new bag. And the jerk, he doing the fly. Don't play him cheap, cause you know he ain't shy. Hold up, he doing the monkey, the mashed potato, jump back jack, see you later alligator. Here with those rules. Come here, baby. Papa's got a brand new bag.
That's the best background I've seen yet.
Yeah, welcome to our office.
Right. Okay, here we go. Amit Mehta, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
We're very excited to talk to you about everything that Good Company Productions has been up to. Do you guys call yourselves Good Company or Good Pro or Good Co?
Yeah, so it's Good Company Productions, and then if we abbreviate, it's Good Co.
That's what I thought, Good Co. So you're talking to us from 44 Gaukel right now. We were talking earlier, your backdrop is beautiful. I see art, I see lights, I see instruments. It looks like a much more fun place than our Studio K here, as we call the kitchen here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that space and what Good Co has been up to in it?
Yeah, that's happy to do that. So yeah, we're based out of 44 Gaukel Street in downtown Kitchener, and our space here serves two main purposes. It is a storage space for all of our equipment. So off camera, we've got racks and racks of equipment, PAs, microphones, whatever you can imagine. And then behind me, what you see is a little bit of a soundstage that we're building as well. So we've got this kind of lounge area. Now, we have just started moving into this space pretty recently. We used to be in a smaller unit here. Normally, most of the production that we do is off-site. We are typically working in small businesses, different venues around town. But what we're doing with our space here at 44 Gawkel is we're actually building in a performance stage, which is what you see behind me. And it is a mix of art and music, which are kind of the two areas that we serve within the community. There is a frame wall behind me, which is a lot bigger than what you actually see there. And every print on that wall is from a local designer that we've worked with, which is pretty cool. And then this whole kind of area, all the tables, etc., roll out and it becomes a performance space. It's actually fully wired up with cameras, lighting, microphones, etc. Just last weekend, we did a shoot for CBC Music from here. So it's kind of set and ready to go, whether it be for emerging musicians all the way up to musicians that are, in some cases would be touring internationally. But it's a cool little nook we've got here.
Kind of a little bit reminiscent of when I've watched NPR Tiny Desk concerts.
Yeah, so Tiny Desk is, I'm a huge fan of Tiny Desk and of EXP sessions, definitely an inspiration for it because, in a pre-COVID world, a lot of the concerts that we were doing were typically more intimate in nature, a little bit more stripped down. And so we're trying to recreate that in this space as well. Give musicians an opportunity to work in a smaller space, to listen to each other play as opposed to just hearing themselves through monitors, right? And I feel like when you perform in that way, it makes you connect with the audience a little bit more, right? And vice versa.
So Good Company, not to be confused with Bad Company, the rock brains behind the 1970s hit "Feel Like Making Love."
Yeah, Paul Rogers. Yeah.
So the name Good Company is obviously very enlightening, brings happiness. How did that name come about?
Good Company Productions. So we were actually named after the feeling that you get when you're at our shows. Mm-hmm. And this is a pre-COVID name, right? So I think it still stands though. But the idea was that when we were at a show, we had an incredible audience that was there to listen. We had incredible musicians we were working with, incredible venue hosts, and we felt like we were in good company. So it's a little bit cheeky and a little bit cheesy, but that's where it came from.
I love cheeky and cheesy. I do. I really do. So when I first saw your stuff and I saw, I think it was Paige Warner was the first one that I saw posting that she had received a concert at home box. And I thought, this is cool. Something's happening during COVID where someone's shipping a concert to your house and you get to be a part of it. That's cool that somebody has thought about that. That's a pivot. You guys have been up to stuff well before what I saw of this box here. So how did the company get started? I know just from reading the bio on the website, you think of yourselves as community investors. You are basically doing all the production, the marketing, the photographs, the audio engineering, all of this kind of stuff is happening in-house. And then that profit is used to better the company, pay your employees, all that kind of stuff, but then also move into the community and lift up. The one thing that I find super interesting that I don't think I quite understand yet is a for-profit company is just that, right? You're making your money for your investors. Not for profit or nonprofit is for the public good. And then a social for-profit company is a what?
Yeah. So this is a great question.
Thank you.
Our business has two wings. We have a corporate wing and we have an artist or creative wing. The corporate wing is what makes us our money. So a lot of people don't know this because we don't really advertise it, but we make most of our revenue from corporate clients like tech companies in the region, universities, sometimes small biz. And for them, we're typically doing productions such as a keynote speech, or it might be a live stream concert actually for their employees, or a product launch. It could be anything like that. We use that money to pay the team, to buy the gear that we have, etc., and to be able to subsidize a lot of the work that we do with creatives. So we do a lot of work with musicians in the region, anything from release shows and release parties to helping them with photography or demo recordings or getting them gigs at higher paid opportunities, right? All of that is able to happen because we have revenue coming in from a different wing of the company to sustain it. That means that we don't have to charge these artists full prices, right? So typically what we do is if it's an emerging artist or if it's an independent artist, we try and subsidize our rates as much as we can to make it accessible for them. A lot of work now that we're doing happens to be with larger musicians that are signed to a label or something like that, in which case we don't need to do that, right? They get what they pay for. But this model allows allows us to kind of reinvest in the community, right? So it's a lot more work. A lot of folks would say, why don't you just go the nonprofit route? And it's because by being a for-profit, we have full autonomy, right? Mm-hmm. We're debt-free. We don't have any investors. It's just me and the crew. And we kind of have full say, full discretion over where we invest our time and money, which means that when a musician comes to us or a designer or a creative and they want to try something, we can do it without having to justify making any return on it, right? We can experiment. And I think that's been something that's really allowed us to kind of thrive through the pandemic in some ways. The beginning was definitely tough, but that's what's allowed us to keep going.
Yeah, it'd be quite a different animal if you were answering specifically to investors who don't have their hands dirty in a good way, in that good earth of what you guys are building. I know that's something that Marshall often speaks about, being a writer for decades and having your piece edited for someone else. That's something you struggle with.
Yeah, have someone else muck up your work, right?
So this way, it's just trust your own discretion, right? Listen to what people are telling you. Listen to what your stakeholders are telling you. And in this case, our stakeholders are creatives, right? So it's just easier. It's better.
So Amit, when you are working off site and maybe setting up a concert, what are you looking at when you walk into a space? And maybe is it like where does the stage go first of all? And then I was watching this YouTube concert with Blue Rodeo pre-COVID in some tiny little place in downtown Toronto with George Stroumboulopoulos, and I couldn't believe how small it was, but they somehow got everybody in there and it all worked. I often think that it would be much harder to transform any space that already has stuff in it,
Yeah. This is where we thrive. This is absolutely where we thrive. So for people that don't know, when we were hosting concerts pre-COVID and even now, we don't host shows in traditional music venues. That's like almost a hard rule. And the reason is that we are trying to create an experience that is absolutely unique for that one night for everybody involved. Things that I'm looking at as soon as we walk in the door is how do we create an intimate experience between the artist and the audience, right? So normally our stages are not on risers. The musicians are on the ground, just like the audience. Everybody's at the same level. The audience is sometimes sitting on the ground, and it's all about reducing the barrier between the music and the people who are consuming it, so to speak. So walking into a venue, I'm looking at that. It's not where the stage goes, it's the audience flow. How am I going to create opportunities for people to interact with each other, to meet a new friend, right? How am I going to create opportunities for them to engage with the venue that they're in? How do we lean into the space that we're hosting a show in, or in cases now where we're live streaming from, right? So we've hosted shows in places like crazy places. We've done museums, but we've also done hair salons. We've done galleries. We've done tech offices. We've done house shows. We've done like literally anything you can think of. It's pretty wild, right? And you want that to be a very unique experience. So I'm trying not to mimic the stage setup that you would see at a venue.
So what would you do with a hair salon? So I'm thinking, okay, there's all these stationary chairs, big bulky chairs that are in place with these mirrors. And this place has been completely designed for this one purpose, right? So what do you do when you get into a hair salon?
So work off the mirrors, first of all, right? We did a show at Artline Hair Salon in Belmont Village. It must have been 2018 or 19 now. 2018, I think. And the way that we set that show up is we actually did it long. So the artist was all the way at one end of the salon and everybody else was kind of sitting in tiers going the other way. So we took advantage of the mirrors to kind of give people sight lines. No matter where they were sitting, they still had a direct view of the artist, sometimes through a mirror, which is kind of interesting and a little bit wacky. But the other thing that we did in that space is that we leaned into what was already in the salon. So there were mannequins of... If you don't know Artline Hair Salon, it's run by a woman named Lena, and she's absolutely fantastic. But she's also
Lena's been on the show, actually. Sorry to speak over you. Yeah.
So cool, and she's like an award-winning hairdresser. Like she's just this super cool person. So she's got all this cool stuff in her salon that we just wanted to use as props, and she's like, go for it. So it was a very unique experience where those seats that you would normally be getting a haircut in, you're now sitting in to watch a show, and there's like mannequins on the tabletops around you and around the musicians, and just really weird and something that you would totally not see if you were to go there on any normal day.
And having seen some of Lena's work, I can imagine those are not just your run-of-the-mill mall mannequins. They've got some wild hair, maybe some interesting facial structure to them. They're not just the everyday mannequin that you would see.
which is really cool because she's a creative in her own right as well, right? So it's like art that complements the music and vice versa, right? It all adds into this experience.
So that's like the fun guts of the stuff that you guys are doing out in the community. It's been quite a year. So when I mentioned earlier about seeing these concert in a box things, this package that goes out, and that's not the only thing that you have going on. Maybe just can you talk a little bit about those boxes and some of those different ways that you've been connecting with the community and bringing music to the listener?
Yeah. When the pandemic hit, it hit us really, really hard. We're a startup, right? We're small, we're totally bootstrapped. And we had really invested in a lot of live equipment going into summer 2020. The pandemic hit and that investment now became useless, and we didn't get any rent relief. We did not get any insurance relief. So we were really struggling. 2020 was a really tough year for us. The first 2 months, we really honestly did nothing. We were thinking about our musicians first. We didn't do anything for the business. We were trying to figure out how to support musicians with grant opportunities or connecting them with people that can help them financially, because a lot of musicians were either working part-time in hospitality or service, right? So that they could also work part-time in gigs. And both those industries were wiped out. So that's part one. Those were the first 2 months. Then we started thinking about, okay, there aren't actually any opportunities out there for musicians. We've got to create some. And at our shows, like I said before, a big part of what we do is leaning into the venue that we're working from. That's not just good for us, it's good for our partners at those venues, right? Financially, it's good for them as well. They're selling goods to all of the audience members that are there that night. The concert in a box came up as a way for us to repackage what our normal shows would be like and include everyone that would normally be involved. So it was a live stream concert, which means that we can now create performance opportunities for our musicians, which are paid. That's thing number one, right? That's great. Number two is it gives our audience something to do. It gives them a live event to look forward to participate in, to engage with each other and with musicians at, right? But number three was the box component itself. And there were two big reasons that we did the box. Number one is that it gives all audience members a shared experience, right? Now
Something
it's not
tangible, something you can touch. Yeah.
Exactly, right? It's no longer just about the live stream that you're watching. It's now about this experience that we've truly curated for everyone, that they're having at the same time at home. So they're together, even though they're separate. And what we included in the box was extremely important. So we had cocktail kits. We have different types of snacks, sweet and savory. We have what we call a keeper item, which is for one box, we did a succulent. For another one, we did these custom mugs, which are like branded with good company. We've done handmade record bowls. So just things that people can keep, right? And the biggest thing is that all of the vendors that were included in our boxes are people that we would normally work with pre-COVID. So it was a way for us to support the businesses that we'd normally host shows with, whether we'd be buying alcohol from them or buying snacks or whatever it may be. When we do these concert boxes for the community, we do them at cost. So we make no profit off of them. We buy everything at cost, or I guess we pay full price with all of our vendors, and the musicians are paid off of 100% of the ticket sales. So that was really like our way to try and give back. Since then, the concert in a box has really blown up. We're now doing it as a corporate event, not just within Kitchener-Waterloo, but across North America, which is pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Let's talk a little bit more about the sliding scale for the ticket prices. I was reading about that on your website, and I thought that was a beautiful thing. This is something that we should brand as Sarah's catchphrase. I say, that's a beautiful thing, often because I'm just so uplifted by some of the things that are going on in our community, especially over this past year. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about that, the sliding scale for ticket prices.
Yeah, so we wanted to make sure that these events were accessible. We do our shows now in a sliding scale for these concert in a box where it's $5 to $30 in $5 increments. And that's just to make sure that people who might be going through a tough time right now still have access to live music. The flip side of that is we'll always phrase it. You'll see this on the website. If you can afford to pay more, we try and set it up in a way where you can pay a little bit more if you're comfortable with that, to try and offset the cost for those who may not be able to afford it. And we found that people really do that. It's really incredible. And it's just good to know. It's reassuring because all that money ends up going back to the musicians as well. For our last 2 Concert in a Box events, we were able to get sponsorship, which also helped us guarantee like a base compensation for the musicians. And it's just been really nice to see people come together and actually use that sliding scale for what it's meant for, not to take advantage of it, but to use it to support each other.
Mm-hmm.
In my 20s, I enjoyed going to countless concerts in small bars, but what I never did, or what I'm going to say it like this, what I was always aware of, that the bands were going on really, really late so that the bar could sell as much beer as possible. And you kind of felt a bit like you were a bit of a hostage there, like the opening act would go on quite late and then the main act would go on at 11. It made for a really late evening. And I always remember thinking that putting the music on at a good time was not a priority, but rather that bar needed to make money. And that's something I wouldn't miss if that was gone,
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? We don't necessarily have to make money off of the musical shows that we do, right? We, whenever we can, try and cover that from corporate contracts. So you'll find that most of our shows, whether they be live or virtual, tend to be within 2 hours total. And it's because our goal is to give the best possible experience for everybody involved. Our goal at the end of it is not how much money we make, it's how much retention we see, right? How many people come back and engage with those musicians or engage with the vendors in the box and engage with us after the fact.
So what have been some of your favorite spaces to set up in? There's this one beautiful photo on your site where someone's performing and the wall behind them is kind of like, it's like you can see brick coming through. It looks like it was painted or drywall, I'm not sure, but it just looks like the old button factory kind of in Waterloo, but it's not there, it's somewhere else.
You're close. It's the old Beamer box factory in downtown Kitchener on Duke.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's the 3rd floor of that building at the old Hive office. They're a tech company in town. Traditionally, we would do a show with them every single year. So, that was the last one that we did there. And for those who haven't seen the photo, it's one of my favorite photos because it shows the stage with the artist, which was Cassidy Mann in that photo, on one side of the screen, and then you see this like split in the middle where it's the audience sitting on the floor and they tear up into the distance. It's just filled with people. That is a beautiful space, and it's near and dear to my heart because every year, like I was saying, we did a show there, and every year we'd have twice the amount of people. And most recently, last year, we did one of our biggest corporate contracts there for Amazon Music and JJ Wild. So even in a pandemic, we were able to use that space, and it's just cool because they're the team at Hive have been really great supporters of what we do, even though they don't work in the same space. They're a tech company, right? So that's been cool. But other favorite spaces, the Shopify office in Uptown Waterloo, which is the old Seagram building. That's an absolutely beautiful place to shoot in and to just host a show. Honestly, like Uptown Square is a really good one. We did a show there in 2019 called Summer in the Square, where we had over a dozen pools filled with water and like Muskoka chairs and towels and cocktails and, this whole kind of thing. We transformed it into a beach for a show. That was a good one. We've done, I can't even think of all the places we've done shows now. It'll come to me. Let's revisit that.
Well, I think about, sometimes you can go into a really sterile space that doesn't have a very good energy. Have you found yourself in spaces where you thought, oh boy, what are we going to do with this?
Oh yeah, definitely. It feels weird to name names after that, but one of the spaces that we hosted a show in when it was still being built was Catalyst 137. And now you go to that space, pre-COVID, and it was buzzing, right? Like more companies had moved in. They had finished all of the retrofitting of that beautiful green wall and their lights and things like that in the lobby. When we hosted that show, it was just a big concrete room. It felt very industrial, and that was actually something kind of cool that we wanted to lean into. So, like I said before, right? It's all about taking advantage of that space, and we really did take advantage of it that way. We kept it as open as possible. We wanted to make it feel expansive, right? So kind of get the natural room sound in there, make it a concert that doesn't feel like it's trying to be something else. Like it is a show in a big, massive concrete room. So let's take advantage of that, lean into it, right?
My mind is racing with permits and and approvals and all this kind of stuff. So how's that journey been for you guys since starting this?
Yeah,
there's a lot to learn when you on the onset, right?
Yeah. So we've been pretty on top of it, on top of this throughout. I think a lot of folks don't realize like how much administrative work goes into what we do behind the scenes, not just with things like permits, SOPs. We've been fortunate that we've been recognized as a municipal significance group in both Kitchener and Waterloo, which allows us to get SOPs as a for-profit. We've got noise exemption permits. We've got all of that handled. And it's not because luckily we didn't learn it the hard way. We didn't just do it wrong and then get slapped on the wrist. We did our diligence every single time. And it's been painstaking, but it's also put us in a position where we now have really great relationships within the community to be able to pull things off like this. And it's not just that, like insurance itself is just so nuanced and difficult to deal with. And a lot of the spaces that we're shooting in, because they're not typical venues, we have to provide a lot of insurance coverage, a lot of liability coverage. So, these are the things behind the scenes that our guests don't necessarily know about or think about. Our musicians don't think about the licensing fees and the royalties that we pay out, all the tariffs, all the taxes, right? Because we're a for-profit. But it's the right way of doing things. And although it sucks at the end of the year to see like 43% of your revenue just gone, you know that most of the time it's going to a good place, and it just pushes you a little bit harder, right, to go after even bigger contracts.
This touches on how you talked about the Artline Salon space, but one of my favorite memories in the 80s is going to the Kitchen Auditorium and seeing pro wrestling. And they would leave the glass up at each end of the rink. And if you were to look off to the one end, you could see the wrestling being reflected in the glass of the hockey rink. It looked a bit like television, but kind of more, I don't know,
Obscure, kind
translucent.
of.
Yeah. I remember just thinking that looks so awesome. And you really felt like you were present in a moment. Have you had some happy accidents like that where you've had a show and something just worked out perfectly for that night and it would probably never happen again?
Yeah, actually that Catalyst show is a good example. We had a band that was playing, and it turns out that we had some breakdancers in the room, and we had no idea. They just got up spontaneously during a performance, and suddenly we had not just a musical performance, but also a dance performance. And, that's one of those things where it's like, this is happening right now. You're going to tell people about it afterwards, but it's never going to be the same.
If I were there, I would 100% think that you brought them and hired them to break dance, but this was a happy accident.
Yeah, this was totally spontaneous. I didn't know any of those dancers. It was very cool.
How about the height of a ceiling? You go into every place and every place has a different height. How do you feel when you walk in and the ceiling's really low? And then how do you feel when you walk in and you have a ton of space above your head?
Yeah. So now our audio engineers hate me for this because I always pick the venue without telling them. But part of what they have learned to do is adapt to the space that we are doing a show in, whether that be for a virtual concert or an in-person concert. When I'm looking at ceiling height, I'm not really thinking about audio. Like I am a little bit thinking about hard surfaces, how we might have to treat the space before a show, whether it be with baffling or breaking it up somehow. But specifically, I'm thinking about, okay, if this is a high ceiling or a low ceiling, what can we do with lighting to kind of accentuate that? What can we do with sound? Can we put an a cappella group in a space with high ceilings to take advantage of that natural reverb, right? We're really trying to build around the space that we're shooting in.
Bonn Park is supported by the St. Jacobs Farmers Market. Marshall, let's take a minute here and talk about one of our favorite vendors at the market, Sen Cuisine. This is Vietnamese cuisine, and it's among the world's healthiest and tastiest, and that's one of the reasons why I really like it.
Yes, you can find them in the White Market tent, and it's always a destination for my family every time we go on Saturday.
Me and my family, too. For me and Summer, she's my youngest, we are hooked on the vegetarian pad thai. It is citrusy, and it is spicy, and it warms your soul. My husband, Steve, loves the chicken pad thai, and my daughter, Justina, is actually really hooked on their salad rolls, one of their great appetizers, but she eats it as a meal.
Yeah, we're wild about the pad thai too. It's so tangy, and we find it can make for a great meal any time of the day. In fact, sometimes for breakfast we'll have pad thai.
I've done that.
But the favorite of my oldest daughter, Mason, is the must-try veggie curry rice noodles, and it's got beans and carrots and crispy shallots. And then one of my favorite parts is a fiery and flavorful Asian hot sauce that you get with it. And you can either have them drizzle it right on or get it off to the side.
And something that you actually taught me, Marshall, that I didn't know beforehand was that they make their own tofu. And so now I'm just buying my tofu directly from Hannah out at Sen Cuisine.
Yeah, and it's just made with two simple ingredients, Canada-grown soybeans and organic vinegar, and there's no preservatives and no filler, which we really appreciate. When we last visited, Hannah actually told us a bit about where that recipe came from.
Let's hear that from Hannah herself.
Hi, I'm Hannah from Sen Cuisine at the St. Jacob Farmer Market. My hometown is Hanoi in Vietnam, and we have a lot of healthy food. My uncle made tofu when I was a child. When I came here, I tried a lot of tofu in Canada, but it's not like my uncle tofu. So we try from my uncle recipe in here. People say that they never try the tofu like that before. So we are happy to serve great food to great people in here.
Yeah, Marshall, our community should really take pride in welcoming entrepreneurs like Hannah and her sister Ha, the owners of Sen Cuisine. I feel lucky to have their family's delicious recipes to eat.
I couldn't agree more. You really should get out there and try their wonton soup and their amazing noodle dishes. And Sen Cuisine brings every one of their dishes to life with fresh ingredients and a balance of distinct, fresh flavors. I never get tired of it.
Yeah, it's super yummy.
I think our flavor in my hometown is very special. So I want to serve the best food, the unique food, and the taste like in my home country.
Back in 1987, the Cult played a show at Super Skate 7 here in town. We had Gary Stewart, who ran the Super Skate 7 and the Twist, and then Flying Dog and Revolution. And he shared with us how that night went down. Guns N' Roses opened, right? And they used a certain amount of lighting and power, and that went well. But then the Cult came on. And it was almost like that band was too big for that venue. Like they blew all the circuits, right? And Gary had to quickly scramble to figure out what to do because I don't know how to describe it other than it's like the band was too big and too loud. Yep. And have you had any situations like that where something just went completely sideways on you?
Yeah, we've had two situations. So one, this was our second show ever. We had a lot to learn at the time in terms of audio engineering and electricity and how that works. And we did blow a couple of circuits in the building that we were working in, just because it was an older building and it didn't have separate circuits. Right now we know we need at least two 15 amp circuits to do a show. So that we had a power out in the middle of the show. We were able to rectify it pretty quickly and good to go. One that haunts me to this day is a show that we did at St. Jerome's College out by Waterloo, and beautiful space. We had 3 really incredible bands performing, and we had a hazer going that night. So we don't use fog machines because they leave residue. We use a hazer, which is a lot more expensive, but it leaves no residue. And when we're working in non-traditional venues, that's very important to us to be able to leave it the way it was when we came in. So we're using this hazer, and the fire alarm goes off, and I'm like, okay, it can't be the hazer. Like, that wouldn't trip a fire alarm. That doesn't make any sense. So we reset the alarm, turn it back on, keep going, and it goes off again. Second time, the fire department comes. So now I've got 150 audience members standing outside. I think the show was in like November. Everyone's standing outside in the parking lot at St. Jerome's while the fire department's trying to figure out what the source of the issue is. That is where we learned the hard way that there are different types of smoke detectors. Chemical is what most people have, most buildings, but optical smoke detectors are something which are like coming onto the market. St. Jerome's had just gone through a renovation and they had optical smoke detectors. And so it didn't matter that it was haze and not smoke. Optical means they're shooting a laser at it and they thought it was smoke. So yeah. So now we know. Every venue we're in, now I'm like, gotta check the smoke detectors, right? We learned the hard way on that one.
Try not to laugh too loud because I don't want to cut out your audio, but that's awesome. Did you guys end up getting back inside or was it a shutdown at that point?
No, we did get back inside and I had to
good.
apologize a million times, but like the audience is in for it, right? They're like, yeah, this is cool. Like, when else would this have happened, right?
And that's the story that they're going to tell at the end of the day, right?
Yeah. The bands were so good that they literally set the venue on fire. That's how we're going to tell it.
So tell us a bit about your favorite shows that have been virtual since being, in this situation that we're in. Tell us a little bit about your favorite ones. I mean, it's like asking for you to pick a favorite child or a favorite band, of course, but just something that's memorable.
Yeah. Oh, I've got one right off the bat. We've been doing virtual shows for now a year, and it took us a long time to get accustomed to it and figure out all the nitty gritty details of what makes it great. There's a series that we started called Live at 44, which is a very special series to me. It's a collaboration between a musical artist and a visual artist. And what I mean by that is if you think about if you think about a virtual concert and you compare it to an in-person concert, if you were to just adapt an in-person concert to virtual, then it becomes very boring because people have that longing for wanting to be at an in-person concert, right? When we're designing virtual events, we design them from the ground up. So I'm thinking about what kind of things can we take advantage of now that we're in a virtual setting that we could not in an in-person setting. And one of the big things is what we show on camera, right? What are we curating in terms of visuals for the audience to go along with the performance musically that they're hearing. And that's where this series comes from. So a few weeks ago at the end of February, we did a Live at 44 show that was a collaboration between a musical artist called Jaguar Sun, who is from Elmira, and he's just an incredible musician, and with a visual artist named Omri Vandeborn from Otherwise Studios in Guelph. And this show is still unlisted on our YouTube channel because only ticket holders get access for the month. But at the end of March, it will be flipped to public. So after that, people can go watch it. It is just like a masterpiece, in my opinion, of beautiful artwork that Omri had created with projections, shadows, light manipulation that was just projected into the space while Jaguar Sun was performing. And all of it was created based on how she interpreted the music. So now you've got this really beautiful visual to go along with the sound, and like it's so special to me watching that show. Every single time I start watching it, I have to watch the whole thing through because it was a lot of work to put together, and we pulled it off. The camera crew did an incredible job. Like, I'm very proud of our team, but for the artists involved too, like they both put their heart into it, and it's just such a beautiful performance. So that's definitely one of my highlights.
And how does your background in nanotechnology fit into with this with Good Company?
He's been waiting to ask.
Yeah. So Sarah and I do know a little bit about nanotechnology.
I just know a little, a small, tiny bit about nanotechnology. How old is that joke? Sorry.
Yeah.
No, it's not just me. It's also our audio lead is also a nanotechnology engineering graduate. He and I were in the same class. I've always been a big advocate of university not being about content, but rather being about context. And I think that's where the degree comes in handy too. It doesn't matter what I learned at UW when I was studying nanotechnology engineering. What matters is the fact that I learned it and I learned how to learn it. I think a lot of the skills that I picked up as an engineering student, whether it be adaptability or being able to deal with complex solutions and kind of distill them to the root cause, all of that comes into play with what we're doing here. What my job at Good Company Productions primarily entails is figuring out what either the client or the artist's vision is, and then figuring out how to make that happen from a technical perspective. And that is where I rely on my engineering brain, right? That's where I have to translate, okay, here's all the good stuff that we need to show the audience. What do we do behind the scenes to make that happen seamlessly, right? That's a big part of it, that kind of critical thinking, logic, wired brain that I have, right? Which keeps me up at night sometimes too.
The streaming concerts, when I watch one, I'm well aware that I'm still in my home, right? Like my stuff is around and that. But do you have any ideas on how people can enjoy a streaming concert at home and make themselves just as comfortable as possible and immerse themselves in it as much as possible? Like I said, it could be tricky when your partner's washing the dishes, like just a few feet away, right?
I mean, make it into an event, right? It's got to be a little bit different than just sitting there and watching a YouTube video or something like that. It's got to be an event. Make yourself a special drink. Decorate your space a bit. And this is kind of what our concert box is all about, right? Part of what's included is decorations for your space, whether it be like, think about the senses that you want to activate. Maybe you light a special candle, right? Maybe there's a specific scent. Maybe it's BO that you associate with a concert, right? Like, think about how you can activate your senses so that you feel like you're in a different setting when you're watching it. Specific food that you might only get at a concert, your favorite beer from a past show, right? It's that kind of stuff that puts you into that mindset.
What I kind of love though about, you were mentioning earlier about flipping the shows from being a paid ticket entry, like behind that little paywall, to just being a public link. Because I watched a few of them too. And that is also such a beautiful thing, because here you're creating this experience for this sort of time being while it's happening, sort of in that month or whatever the time frame might be around that, and people are supporting it and giving to it and experiencing it. But then there comes a moment where it just becomes part of the canon and you're just sharing it with whoever might be happening upon the site or whoever might be interested, or maybe somebody who couldn't participate for some sort of reason. And what was the thinking behind that?
Yeah, so the motivation is not actually primarily driven by our guests or the audience. The motivation is driven by our artists. So if you think about a live performance pre-COVID, the performance happens and it's done and it's gone. And if that artist played an incredible set, the best set of their life, and it's not recorded, like, sucks, right? The beauty of what we're doing here is that after the videos are flipped to public, they now become content for that artist to market themselves, but also to apply to other opportunities with, right? Whether it be festivals or grants or whatever. They now have a full recording of a live set, which a lot of musicians just don't have, right? And when you're recording it in that setting where it's a live performance, you're not in your head as much as a musician. You're now sharing your craft, you're sharing your story, and it's a lot more authentic, right? So for us to be able to flip that to public is very valuable for the musicians first. For our audience, it's nice. It's nice to be able to share that with people that may have missed out, but we will see like 90% of the views happen within the first 2 weeks, right? Because ticket holders will watch it on the day of, and then honestly, a lot of people rewatch it and then share it with friends. And that's kind of how it gets around. After that, it's really just portfolio content for the musician.
Do the musicians give you feedback on performing for a live stream? What I'm thinking is, we've all been to concerts, and clearly not everybody there is of the same mindset to enjoy the show, right? You get a whole batch, right? Of everyone from who's had way too much to drink before they arrive, to somebody who's really into talking with somebody else. And just, there's so many ways other people can destroy the concert experience. Have some of these musicians you've worked with talked about what this means for them to know they have a real listening audience, without all that distraction, I guess. Yeah.
All that noise, right? So, okay. So I'll preface this by saying that in our pre-COVID concerts, in-person concerts, we actually have a rule at most of our shows, which is that when somebody's performing on stage, there's no talking in the audience. And it's for that reason exactly. Like, this is a listener's audience. You're there to experience the moment together, and that means sharing it with the musician and letting them tell their craft, unless they want you to engage, right? It makes for like a very safe space for people to just engage with each other. It's the same thing virtually. It's really difficult for a lot of musicians to perform without a crowd, without an audience, right? They're just playing to cameras, and our crew will try and hype them up. You'll hear it on a lot of our live streams. Like, after they finish a set, you'll hear us, all three of us, just like yelling and clapping on the other side of the cameras. And we try to do that to give them that energy. But really, I think one of the best things that's happened over this pandemic is in all of our live stream concerts, you'll see that we have the chat going throughout, and the audience can comment in real time, and we're able to show that to the musician in real time as well while they're performing. That's not something that you could do in an in-person setting. Everyone's just yelling at the end of a set, but you've got no clue what people are telling you, right? And it's really wholesome, and I think really motivating for a lot of musicians to see their fans and what they're actually saying, their direct messages of support or jokes or whatever it may be, and to see the names of the people that are watching, to see friends who live like 3 cities away that are tuning in because they're no longer limited by locale, right? Or to see like names and faces they don't recognize at all. That's really cool.
Also, I imagine the musicians can build a set list around that, knowing that the audience will be like that. What I mean is, I remember I went and saw Greg Keeler of Blue Rodeo on his first solo tour at Mrs. Robinson's in 1998.
Oh, geez, that's really going. Sorry, I'm now thinking about all the shows I saw at Mrs. Robinson's. Thank you, Marshall, for bringing that up.
And you walk in, tables had like little candles and everything looked amazing. And Greg Keeler's record Gone was this really quiet record. And I was really excited and looking forward to this. And Greg opened with the Blue Rodeo song Dark Angel. And right off the bat, some guy in the crowd like makes some huge noise.
But that's such a brooding, like slow, like it's like reverent. Like you need to listen to
totally.
it.
Yeah. It's just like an awesome record. But there were people in the audience that just ruined it. I remember Greg Keeler goes, "Get your own fucking show, man." But what I'm getting at here is these are things musicians have to deal with, right? But with the streaming, they can go into this and they can carefully craft their set list and know exactly what they can play and how to deliver it. And I imagine it frees them up to really do things they wouldn't do in front of a noisy crowd.
I mean, yes and no. It depends on the musician, right? Some musicians thrive off that crowd and that energy, right? And I think it's it's really difficult to perform without an audience for those folks, right? Jaguar Sun is not that case. He actually, this was like the 3rd ever performance he'd done. He's a pretty big musician. He's got millions of spins online, but he had never performed live pre-COVID. He had done like one house show, right? So for him, this was a perfect opportunity. There's a band that we work with pretty frequently called the Free Label out of Toronto, and they are a boy band that choreographs dance moves, and like they're like a hype band, you know? So they feed off that audience energy. And I remember seeing them, they played a live stream with us a few months ago, and they still managed to pull that out, but they were looking us in the eye. They were looking at the crew the whole time, you know? So I really think it depends on the musician and what they want to feed into. I think some musicians are able to tame the crowd in scenarios like that, right? Others, absolutely not. It depends on the music. But with our audience, they're also there to listen, right? They're not there to be obstructive. Like, you know, in a virtual world, the barrier is a lot higher for what we need to do to retain an audience, because if they don't like the show, they don't have to walk out of a venue, they just close the tab, right? So most people who are there really want to be there.
Again, that comes back to the Good Company name. It's a funny trade-off, right? Like Marshall's talking about that audience experience being positive or negative, but then you have this interesting trade-off where there might be a lag, or there might be a moment where we're unmuting the crowd so we can hear them for a second, or, you know, if you're doing like a co-host situation, you know, there could be mic issues, and we're all getting used to those for sure. And it's becoming part of our normal life, but it's sort of a different space to get used to than having those people right there, having that crowd right there yelling.
Yeah. How's Waterloo region working for you? Is it the right place to be for Good Company?
Yeah, I mean, I love Kitchener-Waterloo. I'm always a big advocate for KW. So I guess context, before this, while I was starting Good Company Productions, I was also the entrepreneur in residence at the University of Waterloo for 2.5 years. KW has a very special spot in my heart, because it's a great community, not just for creatives, but also for tech folks and everybody in between. It's a really supportive community. It's a place where people take any opportunity they can to meet new folks and figure out how they can support them. It's a place where people figure out how they can collaborate before they compete, you know, for the most part. And that is very special and something that we need to hold on to and nurture. And for us, people have asked me this all the time. They're like, why don't you go to Toronto? You'll make so much more money. You'll work with bigger artists. And I'm like, why doesn't Toronto come to us? Like, fuck that, right? Like, I want to be hosting events that are of such a great caliber and quality that people come here to participate in them, whether they be audience members, musicians, or anything else. And I think we've been able to achieve that to a certain level. Like, if you look at a lot of the labels that we're working with, they're almost all exclusively Toronto or US based. And they're contracting this little tiny Kitchener-based company to do their live streams and to do their video work, as opposed to all of the folks in Toronto who have access to, like, in some cases, millions of dollars of gear and resources and spaces that we don't have access to. The difference is that we've got a community here where I can very easily get us into the Apollo Cinema for a shoot, right? Without a ton of red tape. I can very easily ask for some support from the city of Kitchener for a promotion, or to help me get a permit through, or something like that. And it's because people here know each other, they trust each other, and they're helping each other in good faith. So yeah, I wouldn't go anywhere else. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Again, this is the Free Label that we're going to listen to on our way out. Enjoy, keep an eye out for upcoming events, and we'll see you soon.
Well, I feel good. I knew that I would tonight, yeah. Well, I feel good. I knew that I would tonight, yeah. You guys ready for it? Here we go, come on. So good. So good. I got you. Well, I feel nice. Like sugar and spice. Well, I feel like sugar and spice, baby. Here we go. Come on, show them how to do it. So nice. So nice. I got you. Break it down one more time for them. Oh, okay, all right. When I hold you in my arms, I know that I can do you no wrong.
Hey all, thanks for meeting us in Bonn Park. Please like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on the platform that you're listening to. And follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Bonn Park Podcast. Original music by Alan Lung.